Your Omaha High with Andy Greenberg is being sponsored by OnCue Marketing, Best Buy Benches, OmahaFastFoods.com, Certified Transmission, Omaha Magazine, Monahan Financial, Sholdit, NP Dodge Real Estate, Valpak, Kohl's Pharmacy, Centrus Federal Credit Union, Ideal Water. Welcome to Your Omaha High with Andy Greenberg, the show that will leave you feeling great about yourself, Omaha's heroes, and Omaha, where we live, work, and play. So park yourself on the bench and have fun. Hi, and welcome to this week's edition of Your Omaha High with Andy Greenberg, the show that you tune in to every Saturday morning to learn great things about yourself, to learn new insights about how to live a tremendous and enjoyable life. Now, we do that in 3 different ways. Number 1, you will hear 4 motivational vignettes that are specific to you. And number 2, you will learn about a nonprofit here in Omaha, Nebraska that does some tremendous work. And number 3, you will also learn from a marvelous individual who has allowed Omaha, Nebraska to be known as the best in the world. What are we talking about? You know, the Henry Doorly Zoo. And we have with us Mr. Dennis Pate, who's the executive director. And Dennis will be chatting with you just a little bit later to learn about how you got Omaha, Nebraska as the number 1 in the world, where most people don't even know where we are on the map.
Looking forward to it, Andy.
So everybody is, and that's really going to work out for us all. Now, let's begin. I want to talk to everybody out there who is a sore loser. Now, you know who you are. You're the ones that when you don't win something, you kind of mope around and everybody says, oh, you're a sore loser. And then, of course, you begin to feel kind of bad about being a sore loser and you get this miserable reputation. And then, of course, sometimes what you do, you don't even bother to compete because you're tired of losing. You're tired of people telling you that you're a sore loser. Well, guess what? I like you. I do. I love sore losers. Why? I want you to feel the physical pain. I want you to feel the soreness. I want you to feel everything that you went through each and every time that you compete against something. I want those bruisers. Why? Because that means while you were competing, while you were doing something, it hurt. You just weren't complacent. You just didn't sit around, well, you know what, I gave it a try and it didn't work for me. Absolutely not. You walked out of there with the bruises. You walked out of there with the cuts. Yeah, you didn't win this time. But the more pain that you feel, the more strength that you gain, the more enthusiasm that you gain, the more energy that you gain. Because when you are that type of a sore loser, you feel the pain. But you know what? I'd like you to one time feel the pain of being a winner. Because it goes the same way. You're going to be bruised. You're going to be hurt. It's going to be something that's going to stay with you. But you're going to have that smile of victory. And then all of a sudden, people are going to look at you and say, wow, there's a winner. That winner didn't happen by accident, by the way. That winner did go through the trials, through the tribulations, through all the issues that a winner has to go through. So right now, if you are feeling like you are a sore loser, you're in the right place. Because very soon, you are going to turn into one that wins and continues to smile. Now, let's talk a little bit about an old saying. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Now, all of us have put ourselves into the shell. All of us have said to ourselves, well, I'm not going to change anything. I'm not going to modify anything because it's not broken. Why do I have to bother to fix it? That is one of the worst statements in the world. That is one of the worst mantras in the world. That is one of the worst ways to live life. Because I need to ask you a question. You remember the old wagon train wheels? We've all seen the shows. We've all seen the pictures. As a matter of fact, we know Nebraska was formed by people who came over in wagons. There's nothing wrong with that wooden wheel, is there? As a matter of fact, if you went out to buy one today for your car, you couldn't. But there's nothing wrong with it. It never broke. It was sturdily built, but it's obsolete. How many of us today are carrying around our own wagon wheels because all we said to ourselves was, you know what? It ain't broke. I'm not going to bother to fix it. And then therefore, it became obsolete. There are personality traits that we have. There are ideas that we have. There are habits that we have. There are characteristics that we have that we keep on saying to ourselves, "It ain't broke, I ain't going to fix it." Well, you know what? You're going to become obsolete. Hate to tell you that. I don't want to break the bad news. I'm supposed to keep you on a high, and I want to lead you in that direction. I want to lead you in the fact that you cannot put a wagon train wheel on your automobile. You have to reinvent it. You have to not only stay with it, you have to be creative. You have to say to yourselves, what is it that I need to do right now in my life to make sure that I am not obsolete? What is it that I'm going to do in my life right now that's going to make me the best, that's going to make me in demand? And Dennis will tell us a little bit about that later, because there was absolutely nothing wrong with the zoo. It wasn't broken. But what did they do? They just went ahead and continued to build on it. And that's the thought process that each and every one of us has to take. Now, right about this time, each and every year, we begin to see the new catalogs or the new brochures or the new emails or the new internet about what? Brand new automobiles. And we can't wait for those automobiles to come out. We want to see all those new inventions, don't we? We want to see all those accessories. We want to see the way now we have cameras in the back. We want to see the way we have GPS trackers all built into it. We want that wonderful sound. We don't want to go back to the times of 1950s, 1960s, where all it was just a plain automobile, do we? We want to go ahead and really have new models. Same thing with us. Each and every year, we need to add a new accessory to who we are. We need to add new features. We need to add something that attracts us to other people. So what I want you to do is I want you to create a brochure of your future. I want you to create new accessories. I want you to create new models. I want you to create new ideas that will absolutely get you to where you want to be. And I want to conclude by another famous statement. And that statement is, we know it, hey, you know what? It's a zoo around here. We all say that when in our offices and work when things aren't going well, don't we? Hey, how's work? Well, it's like a zoo around here. When are people going to start taking control of this place? It's crazy. Ever go to the zoo? It is one of the most sedate, relaxing, educational times that we have. We bring our families there. It is a time for bonding. I want to begin to change that saying. When we say it's a zoo around here, we do want to begin to say, you know what? It's enjoyable. It's pleasurable. It's informative. Everybody gets along. People are having a lot of fun. So let's go ahead and review what we just talked about. We talked about, number one, I want you to be a sore loser. Number two, I don't want you to wait for things to break. Neither should you. Continue to invent. Continue to take a look at new cars. Look at how you look forward to the new accessories, and then say to yourself and others, here's what's coming up with me. And then again, the zoo part of it, always take a look at the opportunity to enjoy yourself. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we get involved in our discussion with Dennis. So take these 4 vignettes, make them part of your personality, make them part of your psyche, make them part of how high you reach, not only in Omaha, but anything that you do in life. Inequality is a reality. Each year, 240,000, listen to this number, 240,000 low-income students who are capable of attending college do not enroll. There's an organization called College Possible, and it is a nonprofit organization focused on coaching students from low-income backgrounds on their path to college admission and through earning a college diploma. College Possible envisions a day when the future of America's children is determined solely by their talent, motivation, and effort. In Omaha, College Possible reaches approximately 1,900 students annually. High school coaches help students in 8 Omaha area schools. College Possible also presents workshops about preparing for the college experience tailored for middle school and underclassmen students. Results matter to College Possible. 94% of last year's schools had Omaha seniors earned admission to a 4-year college, and juniors raised their ACT scores by an average of 16%. And College Possible continues to work with its college-age students as they persist toward their college degree. For more information, visit collegepossible.org. And as we mentioned earlier, we have a very special guest, the executive director of the Henry Dorley Zoo. The zoo that is the #1 zoo in not only in Omaha, of course, but in the entire world. And it is run by Mr. Dennis Pate. Dennis, welcome so much to your Omaha High with Andy Greenberg. I'm excited to learn about what it means. It's like a zoo around here because you definitely have done that for Omaha. But I want to get to a bit of a background.
Okay.
How did you get into the zoo business?
You know, I started like a lot of kids, loving animals.
Okay.
And my dad had grown up on kind of a farm. We actually lived in suburban LA, and we had a chicken in the garage.
Chicken in the garage?
Because my dad was used to having them around the farm, and so
Okay.
he wanted one. And
Yeah.
the looks we'd get by when the chicken was out foraging in the front yard were really something.
Just one chicken?
One chicken. I had a rabbit. I had some hamsters. We had a parakeet. I had a dog. You know, I had a smattering, but I was always absolutely just... I can't tell you how interested I was with learning about animals and the life cycle of animals. It was like learning about Martians to me.
Okay.
Completely different from us.
Sure.
And millions of them out there, and what an opportunity.
Oh, I bet. So that's what got you started. So the educational process that you went through?
Well, you know, I took all the biology courses in high school, everything I could, and then when I went to college, I took zoology courses.
Okay.
And I took animal science courses because those had a lot to do with nutrition and reproduction, those sorts of things, comparative anatomy. I took a lot of those sorts of courses, and then after I got a job in a zoo, I got a master's degree and I studied double-striped thick knees, and that's not a punchline.
So how many of us in our lifetime had a childhood dream and did not succeed in living it? Well, this gentleman did, didn't he? Started off with a chicken, and now we'll ask him a little bit later how many animals he really has. But that's a person who had a dream and took it to fruition. So how did you end up in Omaha?
Well, you know, I have been at the zoo in Jacksonville, Florida.
Okay.
Long story short, I started in Chicago at Lincoln Park, worked there about 12 years, moved up through 3 or 4 different positions, then went to Portland, Oregon, became general curator overseeing the animal collection.
Wow.
From there, moved back to Chicago.
Okay.
Here's an instance where you never think you're going to go back to an organization you left, and I did 10 years later.
And why? What got you back there?
You know, it was interesting. An executive search firm had called me because they were looking for a senior vice president.
Right.
And they were just looking for names.
Right.
And so I gave them a few names, and that was the end of it.
Okay.
And they called back, and they said, well, do you know our director? And I said, sure, he's a friend of mine. And they said, well, are you interested? I said, not really.
Okay.
You know, because if we're friends, and if he thought it was a good fit,
Right.
he would have called me.
He would have called you,
so
sure.
that's okay. I like where I'm at now. It's not a
Right.
big deal. Tell Kevin I said hi. And so then I get another call back.
And they pursued it.
We're really interested in you.
Yeah, which is a great thing about persistence. Somebody wanted him bad. What I'd like you to think about is, are you needed that badly? Will people come after you? Well, it depends upon the value that you bring to them. But that's another excellent lesson. Now, just between you and I, and we'll keep it a secret from everybody
All right.
else, all right?
Deal.
When you heard about the opening in Omaha, Nebraska, what went through your mind? Omaha?
You know, I didn't hear about the opening. I got called.
All right.
Because it was not a public recruitment.
All right.
And so I got called by an executive search firm out of the blue.
All right.
And I got called and said, you know, we're looking around. Other people have given us your name.
Right.
Because, you know, the zoo business is there's 224 accredited zoos. We all know one another.
Right.
And in the course of making calls to find out likely candidates, I didn't know, but other people referred me. So they kind of called me out of the blue, and I said, well, I don't know, you know, I'm happy here.
Sure.
And they said, well, I think this would be really good for your career, it'd be good for your family. Omaha's a nice city, you should consider it. Think about it, I'll call you back.
All right. But I'm interested in the part when they said Omaha. Was it something that you instantaneously rejected, like a lot of people do, or were you somewhat attracted to the aura of the city?
Neither.
Neither, okay.
Neither. I didn't know what to think. It didn't have a brand to me.
Right.
You know, when you say Florida, you think of beaches and palm trees and Disney World or whatever. It didn't really have a brand to me.
Identity. Yep.
You know, I was here in '93 for an annual conference.
Right.
And you know, I went to the zoo. I attended the conference, which was then at 72nd at that. Was it a Holiday Inn there? That was the
used
conference
to be.
center.
Right.
That's where it was, and I'll never forget. You know, I had been living in Florida, and I'd lived in Portland, Oregon, and some of the other places, and I got tired of eating hamburgers and meat, and I said, you know, do you have veggie burgers here?
Yeah. Here in Omaha?
They said, well, sure.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, I'll have one of those.
Right.
They brought it. It was a hamburger with lettuce on it.
So that's an identity for Omaha. That's different.
That was in 93.
93.
Yes.
All right, so you get here,
Yeah.
and when did you have the vision and the foresight to say, we are going to make Omaha the best zoo in the world, which we were just we won based on TripAdvisor and everybody that contributed to that survey. When did the dream come to your mind to put Omaha on the international map?
You know, for one, I already thought it was on the international map.
Okay.
But number two, I didn't know if I wanted to come here or not until I met some of the board members who interviewed me, until I saw the zoo, and I wanted to know after I walked around the zoo whether I thought I could make a difference, whether I was the right fit. And so as I walked around the zoo and I talked to Dr. Simmons, the former director, and I thought about what he did and what I could add to that and whether I had the right skill set, that's when I got excited. But I didn't know it until I came and sort of had a look at the place.
And that's a very, very profound statement. He just didn't take a job to say, you know what, everything's going to be the same. Hey, I'm going to go into the job. It'll be status quo. I'll slide through. The cost of living here in Omaha, Nebraska is terrific. It's a nice family. No, none of that. Which shows each and every one of us that when we take on a new assignment, we should have that attitude that says, what can I do to make it better? What can I do? I'm going to quote his words, to make a difference. That's the key. That's where you feel good. So you have this vision. It's going to be the best in the world. We're going to win. How do you share that with other people to get them into that same mindset that you have?
Well, you know, Andy, I never thought about being the best in the world.
Okay.
All I think about every day is how can we get better?
All right.
And you know what happened? People notice.
Yes.
Every day it's how can we make the zoo better for Omaha, for the community, for all the people that work and go there. How can we make it better? How can we make it better in economic impact? How can we be a better educational source for learning about animals? How can we help save animals better and better and better? And when you focus just on the better and not worry about a prize, you really get better.
That's an interesting way to look at it. But how do you handle people that say, I just want to come to work, collect a paycheck, and not get in trouble and go home?
There aren't many of those people at the zoo because the paychecks aren't that big. Because they love what they do.
That's what I wanted to hear.
And that's part of the payday.
That's what I wanted to hear. You know, it's what we do and how much enjoyment we get out of it, not necessarily how much money we bring home. Yes, money's important. It's a measurement. It's a quality of life, so to speak. But I want to use that word quality of life because quality of life is basically your happiness index. When you go to work, you know you're making a difference. You know there are changes coming. That's a quality of life. That's a job satisfaction. So when the award came out, how'd you feel?
Well, we didn't even know about it. The media called us.
Okay.
TripAdvisor didn't say a word.
Really?
Really.
No
and it
plaques,
was on Wall Street Journal, it was on CNN. The media called us.
You didn't even know about it.
We didn't know about it. They called our Dawn Ream, our director of marketing.
Yeah.
They called her. She came into my office. I was actually out of town. And they called, and I think the part that's hard to swallow is the world part.
Right.
And it really warmed my heart to know of all the things we do, the thing that TripAdvisor judged was, did people have a nice time?
Yes.
Did we exceed their expectations?
Yes.
So it wasn't about how big a budget you had, how many animals you had, how many acres you have. It wasn't about all those sort of black and white nuts and bolts things. It was about something that's hard to quantify. Did they have a great time?
So when you come to work in the morning and your team comes to work, what's more important, the financial success of the zoo or the happiness quotient of the zoo based on the people?
Boy, that's a tough one for
Intended.
me because the financial success leads an awful lot of things.
Sure.
It allows me, for instance, to replace all the software and hardware ticketing to make it easier for you to get into the zoo and enjoy the zoo a little more.
Yes, and the time has been cut substantially. I want to compliment you on that.
Thank you.
Terrific job.
Thank you. And so the finance part, I can't underestimate that.
Right.
That is really important. It drives conservation, education programs, quality care for animals, how well we can take care of our guests. It drives all of that, but the guest stuff is right up there pretty high.
Yes. So would you call it a draw, or financial still is somewhat on the top level?
I can't do really much unless financially I'm doing well.
But the key is financially you don't do well if you don't make the guests happy. And when you
That's
make
right.
the guests happy, they're going to wait online, even though the lines are a lot shorter these days. And by the way, if you ever go down there again, they've added 1,000 additional parking spots, but it's still busy. And that's all the work that they have done, including some of the new exhibits, which now leads to a very challenging question. You are number one. Everybody else wants to take you out. What are you and your team going to do to maintain the number one position in the world?
You know, it's interesting. I talked to my boss about this. Somebody else had mentioned to him he hadn't heard this. And he said, well, he looked at me and he said, well, Dennis, that's good. He said, but I want you to work hard to stay there now.
Yeah. Yeah.
I thought, can you give me 5 minutes?
Sure.
You
Sure.
know, but
Right.
you know, it was right on. You know, I'm pleased but not satisfied is
right,
something that's
right.
a phrase that goes around
Sure,
town here quite
sure.
a bit. And so again, I never sought to be number one. I
Right.
just sought to be the best I could
Right.
be. But what all of that didn't say is that we've got $70 million worth of projects on the drawing boards, and we've even started construction on that. So we're number one without that. We're going to replace the oldest parts of the zoo
Right.
within 2 years with all new stuff, 27 acres.
That's fascinating. Of course, you took over the Rosenblatt part of it,
Yep.
so that gives you all the space for it.
Yep.
So there was a lot of pre-planning that went into that. And you even began to pre-plan that before you won the
Well,
best in the world.
I'll tell you, when I came in March of 2009, one of the first things I wanted to do was a master plan.
Right.
I wanted, and it's a wonderful thing to be able to read the future. Well, I could plan my own future. And
Excellent.
so that's what a master plan did for
Yep.
us. And so in June of 10, a year and 2 months after I started, we published a master plan that was a vision for the future. And so that's what started it all rolling. And now we're just taking chunks of the master plan and implementing them. And those bigger visions, those big plans,
Right.
those big reaches, that's what excites the community. That's what excited our donors.
And here's what I find interesting. I have a saying. I don't know if I've ever told you this on the show or not. Here's my saying. What you want to do is create history and then obsolete it. Create history and then obsolete it. And that's basically what you're doing. You want to make the fact that you were number one for 1 year history. You want to obsolete that, but you want to continue to grow. You want those smiling faces. And here's what I find interesting. I don't know if you went through the same thing, but when I moved to Omaha, Nebraska, people said to me, where? Show me on the map where Omaha is, right?
Yeah.
You had that experience too, right? But now, when it comes to zoo where families get together, I don't want to overplay this, but you know how important it is. When we were kids, we went to the zoo with our parents. As parents, we go to the zoo with our kids. And as grandparents, we go with our kids and our grandparents. It's such a marvelous family gathering that it is so important, so crucial to the culture of our society. Now, do you know by any chance how many zoos there are in the world?
I don't. There's 224 accredited in the U.S. There's probably 1,000.
Over
Roughly.
1,000 zoos
Yeah.
around the world.
Those 224 in the U.S. draw 160 million people,
160 here in the U.S.
just in the U.S.
And if I remember correctly, this year, the zoo went over 1 million people.
Well, we've done that the last
For many
3
years.
years. For
Yeah.
many years. It's just when we do it.
So let me ask you this question. You're smiling, you're happy, you go home at the end of the day. What is your personal and professional measurement for job satisfaction?
Well, if you ask my board, it's whether I delivered a project on time and under
Okay,
budget.
but I'm going to ask you. Your personal job satisfaction.
When I see a lot of people in the zoo having
Yes.
a good time and learning,
There you go.
that's what does it for me.
There you go.
The winter days are tough for me.
Yes. Okay.
But all
Oh,
summer
yeah.
long when I walk through, and we had 2 days in July under 8,000.
Yes.
Every other day in July was over 8,000 per day.
That's-
That makes me very happy.
That should.
Because I know we're reaching a lot of
That
people.
should. Now, here's a question for you. How do you measure your job satisfaction? Now, believe it or not, Dennis struggled for a moment, and he answered the question first on an external basis. And then, of course, I wanted to drive it internally. But I want each and every one of us first to internalize our own job satisfaction. Do we make other people smile? Because if we do, it could be our boss, it could be our subordinates, it could be our coworkers. That is one of the best measurements, and Dennis said it, that is one of the best measurements of job satisfaction. You make a difference. You made somebody else's day happy. You added value to their day. You added a memory to their day. Because I guarantee you, when people smile, they remember it. I guarantee you when people smile when you're around, you feel good about the way that is being done. So bring me now 10 years in the future.
Okay.
And we are doing another interview. You're still here in Omaha. We don't want you going anyplace else because you probably have headhunters calling you now, and I know you will not admit it on TV because you've got the board watching.
I'm here to stay.
You're here to stay. So tell me in about 30 seconds what the future of the world of zoos look like here in Omaha.
Well, we've got the master plan,
right,
and we're going to build this big African grasslands exhibit. That'll be open in just a couple of years. We hope to build a new education center. We want to build a new exhibit for Asian animals. We want to expand our conservation programs. And our zoo, along with a lot of other zoos, are shifting their focus. They're shifting their focus. If I care about animals in my zoo, and I do, it's hard for me to not care about the animals in the wild and what's happening.
There you go.
So what we'll be doing, all zoos and aquariums, is expanding what we do to care about animals in the wild too. So that is the future. So we're going to move from being just a place for local people to go and people in the area to a conservation organization that's got a home base as well.
And I have a commitment for you.
Okay.
Because you called me out on my sign. And you said that there was no zoo here on my sign, so eventually we'll put the zoo up there.
All right.
Dennis, thank you so much. There's a reason why we had Dennis on the show today, because again, he took Omaha, Nebraska, made it an international area. And we're going to have more people on the Omaha High with Andy Greenberg to do the exact same thing to allow each and every one of us to continue to grow, to continue to get high on ourselves and on the city of Omaha. So that is what your Omaha High is all about. So what'd you learn today? The 4 motivational vignettes. You learned about college opportunities for those that do not necessarily have the income to go to college, and as a way to support that nonprofit organization. And you learned about how you can be the best in the world. I look forward to you returning again next week on your Omaha High with Andy Greenberg. See you then. Stay high. Your Omaha High with Andy Greenberg was sponsored by OnQ Marketing, Best Buy Benches, OmahaFastFoods.com, Certified Transmission, Omaha Magazine, Monahan Financial, Sholdit, NP Dodge Real Estate, Valpak, Kohl's Pharmacy, Centrus Federal Credit Union, Ideal Water,